Once upon a time, in the quiet Carlithian forest nestled far from the eyes of ordinary folk, there lived a witch named Moria. Her long black hair was once as somber as darkness, and changing shades with each new sunset. Her piercing dark eyes sparkled with the mysteries of the untamed bog. She had lived in a cottage, always cultivating black magic in the roots, trees, and creatures of the forest. But her greatest treasure was her pumpkin patch. Among the few pumpkins that grew in her enchanted garden, there was one enormous, glowing, golden-orange pumpkin that held the most powerful black magic. Its seeds, when properly harnessed, could grant untold strength to the one who wielded them. They could summon storms, part rivers, and make wishes come true. Moria had spent years nurturing this pumpkin, waiting for the day when its magic would be ready to be released. Moria wasn't alone in her cottage. Her loyal companion, a sleek black cat named Daniel Thorn, was always around, whether sleeping or just being sarcastic. His emerald eyes shone as brightly as the stars, and he could speak the language of the witches, a talent rare among even the most magical creatures. Though Moria and Daniel Thorn were at odds most of the time, he remained loyal to her. At the moment he was upset with her because she needed 3 black cat hairs from his head so she could brew a potion. But nothing hardly worked with Moria. That's why it has taken years to cultivate this magical pumpkin. Though Daniel Thorn was always willing to assist, he did not feel comfortable giving her any of his hair. So as he napped, one evening she took it upon herself to shave his head real quick because if she plucked one he would wake up and she couldn't get the other 2. She counted to 3 and shaved his head and left him with a baldness that brought forth shame and embarrassment to him. One crisp autumn morning, as the air turned cool and the leaves began to fall, Moria's mischievous granddaughter, a young and spirited witch in training named Daleth, visited the forest. Daleth had always been curious about her grandmother's secrets, and despite her best efforts to behave, she often found herself getting into trouble. Daleth had heard whispers about the magical pumpkin and the way it hummed with energy under the harvest moon, how its glow could be seen through the misty nights. One dreary eve, while Moria was inside viewing her crystal ball, playing dangerous games and shopping on Hushu simultaneously, Daleth tiptoed into the pumpkin patch. A goofy white owl above her in a tree eerily hooted a "Who's you?" Daleth ignored his hooting intrusion as her eyes widened when she spotted the glowing pumpkin, its pulsing energy beckoning her. "I'm only going to take a look," she whispered to herself, but as she reached out and touched the pumpkin's smooth skin, it shrank in size and leapt into her arms, almost as if it wanted to go with her. Without thinking, Daleth giggled and ran off into the woods, clutching the magical pumpkin to her chest. She had no idea what she had just done. Moria, hearing her giggle and hearing the goofy owl hooting, "Who's you?" felt the feeling of a sudden shift in the air, rushed outside with Daniel Thorn by her side. Her heart sank when she saw the glowing pumpkin was missing from its place. "Daniel Thorn, the pumpkin, it's gone," Moria gasped. The black cat's eyes narrowed. "It could only be Daleth," he said with a hiss. "No other being could get past your magic wards." "We must get it back before morning," Moria said, her voice filled with urgency. "The seeds inside that pumpkin hold immense power, and if it's misused in the wrong hands, I could lose my chance to wield its power to rule. If it's Daleth, she doesn't realize she could trap us forever." Daniel Thorn added, flicking his tail, "Let's find her before the pumpkin begins to open." Together, Moria and Daniel Thorn set off through the forest, following the faint trail of Daleth's magic. The leaves crunched beneath their feet as they ventured deeper into the woods. Along the way, Moria murmured incantations to guide them, while Daniel Thorn's sharp eyes scanned for any sign of the young witch. Eerie echoes reverberate of a neighboring witch Rubith, whom all too often was a drunkard and loved to drink her own potions, leaving her under her own spells, always speaking to her own shadow. As they approached a clearing, they heard a faint giggle, Daleth's unmistakable laugh. Moria and Daniel Thorn crept quietly, careful not to startle her. There, in the clearing, they saw her sitting cross-legged on the ground, the glowing magical pumpkin before her as echoes of Rubith sounded closer than they thought. If Rubith got her hands on the magical pumpkin, they would all be in danger. But something was wrong. The pumpkin had begun to crack open, and the seeds inside were starting to spill out, shimmering like tiny stars. Daleth, unaware of the danger, was reaching for them, her curiosity stronger than her caution. Daleth, stop, Moria called, rushing forward. Daleth jumped in surprise, her hand freezing just inches from the seeds. Grandmother, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take your pumpkin. There's no time for apologies, child, Moria said gently but firmly. The seeds of this pumpkin are powerful, and they must be handled with great care. If even one seed falls into the wrong hands or soil, it could upset the balance of magic. Daniel Thorne padded forward and eyed the cracked pumpkin. We must gather the seeds quickly and return them to the land, he said, so they can grow more potent. Daletha's eyes filled with regret as she watched her grandmother kneel beside the pumpkin. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought it was just a pumpkin. Moria gave her an evil smirk. Magic is often more than it seems. She quickly uttered a spell and poof, and the spell didn't gather the seeds, it turned her hair blonde. Daniel Thorne and Daleth both laughed at her transformation. Daleth, she called, you must help me fix this. Repeat what I say. She muttered a few hocus-pocus lines and Daleth repeated her words and poof. The seeds were gathered and placed in a burlap pouch, but her hair was still blonde. With a nod, Daleth knew the spell had worked, because the glowing seeds were ready to go back home with her grandmother. A soft golden light shone as they closed the pouch. Now, my dear, Moria said, turning to Daleth. Magic is a gift, but it must always be respected. I see you have the potential to do great things, but you must first learn patience and wisdom. If magic is a gift, why do you bum from the Carlithian fairy godmother? Daleth asked. I don't bum. She owes me, Moria uttered. Everyone owes me, she added. Daleth rolled her youthful eyes, her cheeks flushed with both embarrassment and gratitude. I understand, grandmother. I promise I'll be more careful from now on. Daniel Thorne, sitting proudly with his tail wrapped around his paws, purred approvingly. And I'll be here to make sure of that, he said with a wink, because we need those seeds to free us. From that day on, Daleth worked hard to learn from her grandmother, understanding that the most powerful magic came from knowledge and respect. Moria, with Daniel Thorne at her side, knew that her granddaughter would one day become a great witch, but only when she was truly ready to wield the magic of the forest. And so, the forest remained safe. The magical pumpkin continued to grow, and the seeds Daleth left with were the seeds of wisdom sown into her young, curious heart.